hours that it took to plan, the effort that it took from so many people here in this building, in this department to make it special. I thank you for the Bennett family for that.
Look, if I'm a Virginia fan, I actually like that response. I know it's, he wasn't overly praiseworthy of Tony Bennett. With all due respect, he has a job to do, Ron Sanchez does, and it's not to laud over Tony Bennett on Tony Bennett Day. It's to focus on preparing the team to win when he's fighting a major uphill battle. We mentioned this before, trying to jam somewhat of a second peg into a first peg hole, if you want to use that analogy. A two-guard, Virginia has a couple of them. Danny Ainge has been serviceable as a point guard. Same thing with Andrew Rohde. But I don't think they offer the upside what Jalen Worley and Virginia thought they were going to get out of him. And certainly Christian Bliss as well, who, again, I'll maintain, I'd be stunned if he plays this year for UVA. But this is a good thing for Virginia that Ron Sanchez acknowledged all that went into the day, Tony Bennett Day this past Saturday. He acknowledged the impact of Tony Bennett. But he didn't go overboard, and it backed it up. Because if you're a Virginia fan, yes, you can appreciate Tony Bennett, but this year has not been great by their standards. They're not going to the NCAA tournament, barring a miracle run in the ACC tournament in Charlotte. And newsflash, lightning struck last year with NC State, initially, ironically, second game against Virginia with the comeback and the missed free throws from UVA. But that's unlikely to happen again. So you don't hold your breath if you're Virginia. So you're looking at this differently. And one of the which is just again, Ron Sanchez, to make his case, is he growing as a Virginia head coach? Because David Teal brought this up at by David Teal on Twitter, the great reporter for dailypress.com, Hall of Famer. That Ron Sanchez is, keywords here, part of the national search for the next UVA men's basketball coach. Part of means he's in the mix. But part of it also means that he's not the only candidate. If I'm Virginia, absolutely do your due diligence on this. Maybe Sanchez is the guy, and he has a chance to audition, and it starts with the results that he's churned out. They've won 3 of their last 4. Saturday at Virginia Tech would be big. You can avenge a home loss, and you can get a good road victory against, they're not a tournament caliber team, an NCAA tournament, maybe not even an NIT team with Virginia Tech, but against a team that is well coached and kind of similar to where you are. And to do it on the road would mean a lot. And Ron Sanchez mentioned that he believes at least he's growing as the Virginia coach, and he explained in greater depth.
Oof. Where do you want me to start? This isn't part of the coaching script. You never say, well, in my career path, one day I want to take over as an interim coach when a coach retires. So this is something that is just unforeseen. But whether there is a gift for me personally or a gift that I can pass along to someone else, a friend in the future, this is something that has really allowed me to grow as a coach, especially in a way of, leading someone through adversity. I'm a firm believer that you will not be the best version of yourself until you are completely and utterly uncomfortable. So discomfort truly is a gift if you can look at it that way. So we've been uncomfortable as a group. I've been uncomfortable as a coach. So I'm growing, just to answer your question that way.
How often have higher achievers mentioned that they're not complacent and comfortable? Like it is human nature to want to be comfortable in your role. But if you're Ron Sanchez, you don't really have time, and you never really have had time to admire where you are. And frankly, the mindset that's gotten them to get better is by not doing that. It also has helped that you're playing bad teams in a down ACC. Miami, they're not very good. Georgia Tech, they're having a down year. You kind of include that with where the Virginia Cavaliers are. But in their defense, they have fought hard in the other games. SMU had a chance early, but really kind of blown out late on the road. They had a chance throughout the entire game at home. They got beat by Memphis, but they were in the game. They had a chance again. They led down the stretch. Their lack of offense and Memphis much improved was another example of that. They're positives for Virginia. Now they have yet to play Duke, which is the big one for UVA. But for the rest of this team, they're good things to see. And it begs that question that kind of goes on what David Teal said about Ron Sanchez being part of the mix. And he reiterated this, that the idea of future security is not something that's on his mind. And it's almost impossible in general, given the transient nature of college athletics at the higher level.
With the absence of security and what's going to happen, you tend to, really sharpen up. And in the absence of a leader, that left, for me, it's, man, how do I just see that with this opportunity, I have a tremendous, chance to just grow, trying to take a team through this journey. Like, this is not something that many coaches have been through. This is going to benefit me drastically in my career. Whether I'm here, whether I'm elsewhere, it doesn't matter. So for me, it's literally, how do I grow? How do I journey? How do I take any obstacle that comes before me and grow through it? So sorry, Dave, I wish I could tell you more. Away from you asking me this question, I don't even think about that.
Do you like that response if you're a Virginia fan?
I mean, you got to think about it. I mean, this is his first season. Well, all this got hit from out of nowhere. So that's why I feel like this year is like kind of like, okay, we can't get mad at him. Nobody was expecting it. He wasn't expecting. He just got through under the fire. So he's trying his best and stuff as an interim head coach. Now, next season will it be different? Yes, because we will see, okay, this how he is, how he's more prepared coming to the season and stuff, what he's going to do and everything. So right now, all this is kind of like, it's still new to him. He's trying to figure out a way, especially with the players and stuff, because they probably not used to him. They used to Tony Bennett.
He was a coach previously at Charlotte in a completely different era and left when it got challenging, as far, not saying he quit on them, but the game changed to where at that level, you're more of a feeder program, unless you're, again, in the the vein of a Liberty or a Memphis or one of these programs that's got pretty good NIL for a G5 level. If you're not in that vein, it's really hard to have sustained success at that level. So I don't fault him for it. But I'll also say this. He's kind of drinking from a fire hydrant in terms of the nature of college athletics changing. You're just trying to adapt to the personnel that you have. And in his defense, they really don't look like they're a team that's quit and gotten blown out. They look like it at maybe the beginning portion of ACC play, particularly that West Coast swing when they got routed at Stanford and Cal. But since then, they've at least played hard. They found ways to win games. And, again, there's only so much that moral victories can go. If you can get a definitive upgrade at Virginia, you have to go about that route. Rick Carlisle, I don't know if he'd leave the Indiana Pacers, but his pedigree, his experience, that's the easy name that comes to mind. And there may be others that are in that category. I don't think Jay Wright's ever coming back, but let's just say you had a chance to get someone of that caliber. You're taking it. But at least Ron Sanchez has done something to at least put himself in the mix.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and plus you got to think about it too, the transfer portal too. So he's getting used to it as well. Not get used to. He's like, okay, this is how transfer portal goes. Let's see if we can find some players to bring in to help us move the next step that we're looking for.
That's a big part of this, is the understanding of it. And Ron Sanchez, by the way, if you're wondering, he's part of that search. David Teal mentioned this. David Teal of dailypress.com has mentioned that Sanchez is part of the ongoing national search for who will be the next men's basketball coach at UVA. But here's what Ron Sanchez said when Teal asked him about whether he's discussed his future with athletic director Carla Williams, among others.
100% of my time right now is really invested into where we are right now as a team. What the future holds, I can't control. Those things are out of my control. We haven't had conversations about what's going on across the street, and that's not for me. Right now, what is for me is trying to make the best of this season, embracing this journey that has been hard and challenging, but at the same time, seeing the good in that, because I'm growing tremendously in so many different ways because of the challenges that have been placed before me.
He's growing, focused on personal growth and how he can improve as a coach. I know it's not charismatic, but I don't know what else you want the guy to say if you're looking at where he is as a coach, other than just getting better and having his team get better. If they're not winning, it kind of rings hollow and it's easy to roll your eyes at. But the fact they actually have played better the last 3 weeks, I would say it means there's some merit to that. And it's at least worth taking somewhat seriously.
I mean, I just think they starting to trust him more as a head coach and start to understand his philosophy, especially during the middle of the season as well. So that's why I feel like I think they've been improving every day.
And the thing is, if Virginia, whether they keep Ron Sanchez or not, I wouldn't say they got the full, there's the old Nick Saban, Kirby Smart discount that Alabama and Georgia got for a good chunk of time, as far as they didn't have to pay players as much because Nick Saban was basically a golden ticket to the NFL, and it was backed up by that. And Kirby Smart at Georgia has been that way. And whether you're any of those programs or not, it's harder to hoard talent than ever before, because if you show stuff, you have to budget your roster, and there's not an explicit salary cap, but these are not, multi-billion-dollar operations like the Los Angeles Dodgers in baseball, for example. So because of that, the talent gets more spread out, and the discounts don't always apply. I think Virginia was kind of in a similar spot where for a while, Tony Bennett, you kind of got that. And I don't think he ever wanted to dive fully into where this game is until their guardrails and regulations. He said that before. And if you're wondering about the retirement ceremony and what Tony Bennett said, that's something I will honestly dive into more in the offseason, because I think there is stuff worth mentioning, but that is more evergreen and can be discussed. But Ron Sanchez is the guy that he's taken the job. If you believe he's a good X's and O's coach and he knows how to manage and relate to the roster construction and can work with a general manager to, I know it sounds crass, but this is where we are, place value on particular positions and players and how you allocate the funds and money similar to a professional model, which this game is, then he might be the right guy for the job, but you have to have the resources. Otherwise, it's like Virginia Tech. Mike Young's a fantastic coach. He's doing a great job, but there's just a cap on what they're going to do right now because, and if they stick with the model of not paying a lot of guys for basketball at Virginia Tech, there's going to always be a cap on what Mike Young can do because he's fighting with one hand tied behind his back to programs that are investing more in other players.
And that's true about that as well. That's how I feel like UVA has to be. I feel like they just have to be patient with him and help him bring the resources if they want to make UVA a powerhouse basketball team in the ACC.
Speaking of patience, Liberty Flames fans, they've been patient. Sometimes they're not. We'll explain why they should be based on last weekend as they get ready for this weekend's games at New Mexico State and UTEP, the Thursday-Saturday doubleheader out west. 9 o'clock tips. Got to love those, of course. But when we return in the fast lane, the NASCAR season is here. Daytona 500 duels, although there's a lot of inclement weather down at Daytona tonight. They take place tonight to fully set the field in the running order, not that it matters a ton, for the Daytona 500 on Sunday. Also, tomorrow, truck race, Saturday, Xfinity, or whatever they're going to be calling the second-tier race, the Busch Series, and then Sunday is the 500 itself. To look at that in the NASCAR season and what you may have missed in the offseason, Tom Bowles, frontstretch.com, and better noted as Trey's other boss, will join us when we return here in the Fast Lane, 93.3 FM, and the VTRN Sports app.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality. Build with Right Choice.
From interest rates to everyone's personal credit history and background, everybody's in a different spot. At Feller Chevrolet, they understand that. It's why Greg Walker spoke with us and shared how Feller Chevrolet can work with you.
Well, we have multiple lenders, so everybody's different in personality and in their credit equity of what they put into a vehicle. So the different lenders have different areas that they like to go after, and we know which ones to use for the different individuals to get them the best payments possible, terms that they need. As far as interest rates, everybody is saying, oh my goodness, they're getting so high. But if you look historically, we're really right in a rate area that traditionally for housing and cars is very competitive. We've just been so spoiled.
At Feller Chevrolet, they work with people from diverse credit backgrounds to get the right car for their needs. Stop by and see them, Main Street in Alta Vista, and visit fellersdirect.com.
Imagine a community where every homeowner feels heard and valued.
That's the feeling you deserve, and that's the feeling you'll get at Brownstone Properties.
Our dedicated team is here to support you, ensuring clear communication and proactive solutions. Transform your homeowners associations. Call Brownstone Properties today for a free consultation. Brownstoneproperties.com and 3720 Old Forest Road in Lynchburg. Let's build a better community together.
When shopping for auto liability insurance, it's wise to consider the best policy, not the cheapest. Hi, I'm Randy Trost Law. It's crucial to have more than the minimum insurance on your auto liability policy. This protects you if you injure someone or if someone without proper insurance hurts you. Having the right policy ensures you have sufficient underinsured coverage to take care of you and your family. To learn more how we can help you navigate these challenges, visit us at trostlaw.com. That's trostlaw.com.
FrenchStretch.com's Tom Bowles recently joined the Fast Lane to talk about his big concern when it comes to the long-term success of NASCAR.
If you look at NASCAR as a whole, one of the things that I'm concerned about long-term, I don't know if you guys know this, but with Tony Stewart leaving and Stewart-Haas Racing closing down, there isn't a single championship car owner active in the sport right now, guys, that's younger than age 75. Not a single one.
Listen to the Fast Lane weekday afternoon 5 to 6 on VTRN Sports 93.3 FM, 1320 AM. Open VTRN Sports on your smart speaker and stream on the VTRN Sports app. VTRN Sports is brought to you by Feller Chevrolet. Feller Chevrolet, where a short drive will save you money. Feller Chevrolet, Main Street in Alta Vista.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Should we say that misery loves company whenever Tom Bowles joins us in the Fast Lane? Because he and I have the distinction of being colleagues and people that work directly to help Trey Lyle improve his craft, and improve he has to the point that he now has the morning warm-up and will be back tomorrow after being out sick the last couple days, 7 to 8 a.m. as he is weekdays right here on VTRN Sports. Tom, welcome back to the Fast Lane. We hope you had a great offseason, capped off by Sunday's epic, maybe not in terms of the quality of entertainment, but certainly because of the outcome, Philadelphia Eagles demolition of the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59.
Well, thank you very much. You know, it's funny. Everything happens for a reason. I had, schedule change in racing that has kept me from doing the 500 in person for the first time in, except for COVID, almost 20 years. But it allows me to enjoy the fruits of what will be a very, very crazy parade tomorrow in Philly. Very excited about it, and very, very proud of it, of my team that just stepped on out there and just put the hammer down from the very beginning and never let up. It's like it's a 499 out of 500 laps led type of performance.
It is ironic because the quote we could bring up is the old Martin Truex Jr. quote winning the spring race at Darlington a couple of years ago, saying that's an you-know-what whooping right there, boys. And Philadelphia kind of channeled their fan from NASCAR, Martin Truex Jr., and how they handled the Chiefs. It is a convenient segue, though, to the fact that is NASCAR and are the NASCAR executives maybe breathing a bit of a sigh of relief. People have brought up the new qualifying formats, particularly the exemption for drivers that are not necessarily NASCAR veterans, but the superstar exemption, essentially the fact that last night, even with qualifying, and it's not the duels which are scheduled to take place tonight, weather permitting, that's not a given because it's raining down there.
Yes.
But Truex and Johnson are in based on qualifying. Are there exhales because of that?
I don't know if they're exhales per se. In fact, I think it would have been much more exciting to see them race their way in through the duels. I think the duels are still setting up to be one of the better duels that we've seen over the past decade. 9 open cars. It's the most open cars attempting the 500 in the modern charter era. With that said, look, it's a weird thing to have an open exemption provisional and not allow former champions to use it, right? To allow people from other series to come in and use it. But, for decades, we had a champions provisional back before the charter system that was reserved for a past champion to make sure that some of our most legendary drivers never missed the field. I'm very surprised that they wouldn't allow Truex or Johnson to use it. And I can understand the hypocrisy there. And, it's kind of silly to be courting these drivers that aren't in your series full time while not, investing in the people that help build your series to be what it is.
Tom Bowles with us here in the Fast Lane. You mentioned that particular change. We will get to some of the offseason developments momentarily to get people caught up. But speed weeks are here. Duels are tonight. Xfinity, well, Trucks Friday, Xfinity Saturday, Cup race Sunday. All of this is, of course, weather permitting, and NASCAR is already dealing with that down at Daytona with the duels, potentially being delayed because of the rain that's taken place today down there at Daytona. What do you look for in qualifying as far as teams that and manufacturers that may work together, or are we at the point where, and I love the duels, they're extremely entertaining and they're a lot of fun and kind of whet the appetite for the Daytona 500, but I don't really overly invest in it.
First of all, weather affects every Daytona 500, right? I think that we've been in this situation how many different times? I can't remember a year, Ed, where we went the entire weekend without weather affecting the race. And it's become a bigger and bigger deal, I think, over the last 9 or 10 years because of how certain things have been postponed, right? And, that type of thing can disrupt the rhythm, like the duels tonight. I don't think the duels would be canceled, but if the duels were postponed and, put in a time frame where people might not see them, it really ruins what might be a good opportunity for, people to see Justin Allgaier try and race his way in. And some of these higher profile guys battle for those final few spots. But I don't know if there's anything that you can do to change the weather. But, certainly just that alone disrupts some of the momentum or, whatever you want to say for NASCAR going into the season, in terms of how the season begins. You want everything to go smoothly, and you don't want one of the first things you see is a graphic come up on screen that the race is not going to be held tonight.
Yeah, that would be the ultimate damper, if you will. Rain on the parade is literally rain on the NASCAR parade with what you might get tonight if the Daytona 500 duels, the qualifying duels tonight, cannot take place as scheduled because of the event itself. As for the race, your colleague Danny Peters, who needs to be reprimanded because Ty Gibbs is not on this list, has a list of drivers that are looking to break through and win that elusive first Daytona 500 with Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, and even fan favorite Chase Elliott at the top of that, along with Martin Truex Jr. Do you have a group of drivers out of that you are most or least confident would break through and might be able to get that? It will never top the Dale Earnhardt moment of finally breaking through when he finally won it, but could at least bring some level of, oh my goodness, they finally did it.
That's a great question, Ed. And you notice that list is full of a lot of great drivers. I think because of how the drafting tracks work, especially the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen a lot of drivers that are Hall of Famers miss out on an opportunity to get a Daytona 500 win because not that there's complete luck involved. It's just a different type of strategy. Big wreck out of your control can take the fastest car and just put it in the garage in 5 seconds. I'm thinking Tony Stewart in the late 2000s, Tony Stewart never ending up with a 500 win. I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski because Ryan Preece came out, showed some speed in qualifying with his new team. Good for him. Comes out with the new third RFK car, but Keselowski is the guy there with the most drafting experience and wins. He owns Talladega, but has never been able to get the job done in the 500. And the clock is starting to tick for him. He turned 40 last year. He's part owner of that team. You wonder how many more years he's going to drive. The Fords definitely have speed, and it's a fantastic opportunity in this 500, especially with a new second teammate to draft to the front and stay there. I think he's somebody to watch on Sunday.
NASCAR Bowls Twitter and frontstretch.com. He is the man who is the head of frontstretch.com, Tom Bowles, and he's with us here in the fast lane. Tom, for the racing itself, we know Ford, they've been strong on these type of tracks. We know that Chevy, they've got the manufacturer strength and support, including the last year's winner with Liberty University's William Byron. But Toyota, are they off to a better start now, given the prowess and in particular Chase Briscoe and his history doing well here? Or, is it still they're at a disadvantage because of the volume of drivers they have, and therefore the big one takes somebody out? There's just fewer Toyotas to go around.
So I've never really felt, Ed, that the Toyotas were at a disadvantage, even though they have a smaller group than everyone else, because they still have enough inside the draft to be able to hook up and go to the front together. Penske's been dominant, I would say, the last 5 or 6 years during a lot of these drafting races, and they technically don't have a 4-car team. They're affiliated with the Wood brothers, but they only have 3 cars on their team, and Joe Gibbs Racing alone is 4 Toyotas. With that said, it is interesting that they came to the racetrack this year with a lot better one-lap speed. And Chase Briscoe came out with something to prove and put the 19 car on the pole in commanding fashion. We'll see how that translates to the duels. We'll see how that translates to the 500. One of the weird things about Daytona is, that one lap speed is really not conducive to how people will perform in the race. And we saw this last year with the Toyotas where they didn't have the speed in qualifying, but then over the course of the long run, they were able to easily drive to the front. So we're just going to have to wait and see, but certainly early results promising, and you got to be smiling ear to ear if you're Briscoe coming out of a tough situation with Stewart-Haas Racing closing down, going right into Martin Truex Jr.'s old seat, and it's like nothing's changed there over at the 19.
Indeed, that's one of the changes in the NASCAR offseason from last year to this year, but not a lot has changed overall in terms of that. There are other things, and the guy that'll be joining Briscoe on the front row is Austin Cindric with Team Penske. And they'll kind of give us a chance to now, Tom, shift back from the Daytona 500. We'll wrap up, by the way, with your 500 and season champion picks momentarily, or at least championship 4 picks momentarily. But Team Penske president, Tim Cindric, one of the offseason storylines, mentioned that he's stepping back as the overall leader of Stewart-Haas, of the racing organization, but Penske Racing, but will be president of the IndyCar program as a whole. What, if anything, does that do to impact Team Penske, if at all?
Don't think it has a major impact on Penske in terms of the entire organization, Ed. They are very deep, and there are a lot of other great people inside that will take over Tim's role. I look at it more as a little more vulnerability for Austin. That's what I take that move to mean over the long term, because Austin doesn't have Tim directly there. Now, in some ways that will help maybe eliminate the family connection and allow him to stand more on his own 2 feet. But Austin certainly is in what I would call a make or break year. You wonder what would have happened to that ride if he hadn't had that win that put him into the playoffs at Gateway last year. And, since winning the Daytona 500 in 2022, Cindric's results have been a little underwhelming, despite certainly a deserving spot initially after his performance in the Xfinity Series. So that's how I take it. I think that it leaves Cindric a little bit more vulnerable. I mean, look, you cannot bet against Penske with their recent track record. With what Blaney and Logano have done, it's impressive. And so I don't really see major changes there other than, giving other people internally within Penske a chance to shine. I think they're going to be just fine.
Tom Bowles from frontstretch.com stepping into the fast lane, and he's at NASCAR Bowles on Twitter. Tom, you mentioned this, by the way, making fun of the fact that in our lead into our chat with you, you put this out right before we went on, that it's amusing that, we're paraphrasing that, by the way, that it's amusing that you get ready for an interview and you hear us air the promo, which is the promo of you talking about the age of drivers of ownership groups and owners within NASCAR. What about the development in the offseason as well? Jimmy Johnson, we know he's now locked into the Daytona 500, but slated to become the majority owner of Legacy Motor Club under the new partnership with Knighthead Capital this past offseason. Does that do much of anything for this organization, or are they still going to be fighting a major uphill battle outside of tracks like Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta?
Ed, I think that's one of the biggest question marks as we enter the 2025 season. If you talk to people internally within the sport and some of my sources, Legacy last year was described as chaotic, disorganized, really lacking a sense of direction they needed to be more competitive. And I think casual observers even were pretty surprised that the switch to Toyota didn't really do much for them. John Hunter Nemechek had a very, very disappointing year. There were even questions as to whether he'd be back for 2025 late in the season. Eric Jones gets hurt, misses a couple races. And Jimmy Johnson as a driver, it's just been completely off. Hasn't had a top 25 finish, Ed, in the 2 years that he's been back driving part-time. So something had to change. The Gallaghers were the more experienced of the owners, right? Jimmy Johnson is new to this whole ownership thing. So the shift to Johnson is interesting. It's either, the narrative I see happening is it's either Johnson now has the ability to make the changes that he needs to make this thing more competitive, or we're going to find out that Johnson wasn't necessarily cut out for this whole ownership thing, to be totally honest. It's going to be one or the other, and it's definitely some pressure on their side to perform. because they were just so far behind the other Toyotas last year. And with that smaller group, you would have expected a better result. Toyota's all about quality over quantity. That's how they've always done things in the Cup Series. And it was really surprising how they lagged behind.
Tom, overall for NASCAR, there were other changes that transpired throughout the offseason worth mentioning. One, NASCAR playoffs. So far, no changes, but there's the potential that maybe NASCAR will rotate the championship race site starting as early as 2026. How do you see the no playoff changes? Is this no for now or no until NASCAR has a chance to maybe get more feedback, including finding a site that's more universally lauded than Phoenix has been? Great host site from the fan experience, but not necessarily the most entertainment or reflective of overall the NASCAR tracks.
Ed, to be honest, I think there's a lot of stuff on the table. Not only is it no for now, but one of the underreported stories this week is Adam Stern's tip from Steve Phelps that to better grow internationally, NASCAR is exploring an equity stake, an equity sale, and that would be monumental for a sport that's been family owned since it was first established in the late 1940s. There would be a lot of changes associated with that. And I'm a little surprised they didn't try at least something. I know they're doing the point for fastest lap, but people were just so dissatisfied with the playoffs the last couple of years and how things have turned out. I thought that the sport would react to that, but we're just going to see how the season goes, and we're going to see come playoff time if there's a residual effect of 2024 bleeding into this year. And I think that'll help determine for them what types of changes are going to be made in 26, along with what happens at the top, whether there's new partners potentially by the end of the year. There's just so much going on. I don't really think a lot is completely certain after 2025, after that little bombshell that was dropped this week.
Tom, there are other changes that have popped up as well from NASCAR. They dropped all these, right in the early portion of January. And of course, you and your colleagues have thoughts on them at frontstretch.com, and you have your own as well at NASCAR Bowls on Twitter. One of those policies is the playoff waiver policy, which is now changed. If Kyle Larson goes and runs the Indy 500 and does not make it back in time to run the Coke 600 later that evening on Memorial Day, that's the best example, he will lose all playoff points for the entire season, any he may have already gotten and any he may get going forward. So he could be in the playoffs, but he's starting at 0 playoff points. Or if there's another non-medically related reason why a driver misses a NASCAR race. How big is this?
I think it's big to a certain degree. I look back at how some of the more recent playoffs have developed. And most of the champions, I look at Chase Elliott in 2020 winning Martinsville and then winning Phoenix. Joey Logano last year winning Vegas, that puts him in position to succeed and win, at Phoenix. I think that you're always going to have to win a race in the round of 8 to make it through. And if winning you're in is the way that it goes, it doesn't really matter how many playoff points you have, right? Because you win and then you're automatically on to the next round. Now, certainly that leaves you maybe more vulnerable in the round of 16 and the round of 12. But if you're not capable of winning in the semifinals, are you really going to be able to come out on top of that championship anyway? And so I think it is a big deal, but not as big as we're making it out to be. And it actually allows the wiggle room that I think NASCAR wanted, and other series for that matter, for somebody like Kyle to go do what he's doing with the Indy 500. It gives people an out where, there's some sort of punishment, but it doesn't become so drastic that nobody's going to end up trying it. And I think that's a great result for everybody involved, because that's going to be a big story in May. Could you imagine if Larson wins the 500 and then comes down and is able to complete all 400 laps in the Coke 600? That's an amazing accomplishment. And so I think what they did was fair, and it's going to allow for more drivers to do the things that they're doing in the future, at least as long as we have the current playoff system in place.
Tom, we wrap up our chat with you on this one, and Tom Bowles of frontstretch.com and NASCAR Bowles on Twitter for more. First of all, Daytona 500. Who's winning this event, and who do you like being there at the end in contention?
I'm going to go completely outside the box. And I really like what I've seen this week from Ryan Preece. I know that's a huge long shot because he hasn't won a cup race ever. He's first race with a new team. But how often have we seen these weird situations work out, especially at a track like Daytona? You come in with a good car, drafting track, you avoid the wrecks and put yourself in position. He's always been a good drafting track guy. I think I'm going to go way outside the box. I'm going to pick Preece. And as far as, the champion, I think you can't go against Penske. I'm completely going in the opposite direction. I actually think, despite some struggles this week compared to his teammates, I think it's going to be Blaney for a second time in 3 years. Although I really am curious to see what's going on at the 9. Chase Elliott has come out of the box looking a little rejuvenated and looking like he's actually 110% for the first time since his struggles back in 2022. And I'm wondering where that's going to take that team. Hendrick, it always seems to bounce back and forth between some of the top organizations there, and it's about time the 9 team got back on top. So it wouldn't surprise me for Chase to make an extended run. Of course, Larson's always going to be there, and so is Denny. But you can't bet against Penske, not for what they've done the last couple of years and the success that they've had on championship weekend. And so I think it'll be Blaney's turn this time.
Just such a letdown. I was thinking Ty Gibbs had a chance, and maybe he does, but he's not your projection. I'm guessing you don't even think he has a chance at all. No snowball's chance in Hades of making it into the championship 4 at Phoenix either, right?
You are all about Ty, man. I mean, look, Ty's going to win a race this year. I can't imagine that he wouldn't, but it's going to be tough. There's just so many good drivers right now at the top. And look at within his own team, Chase Briscoe coming in might be a 4 or 5 win year for the 19. That alone might just leave Ty out of the later rounds of the playoffs.
Oh, that's just so agonizing. May his first win either be the Daytona 500 or in Martinsville when Trey is there with me and has to endure the unbearable reaction that would be coming. Tom, it's always bearable. Your insight at frontstretch.com and NASCAR Bulls on Twitter. Thanks for sharing some of that today in the Fast Lane.
Thanks for having me.
Tom Bowles with us here in the Fast Lane. When we return, the Liberty Flames. 2 games, 3 nights. You know the deal. Thursday and Saturday night. We'll discuss that and why what we saw against Sam Houston is not as big a deal as some Flames fans might lead you to believe.
Everyone wants to save money on their next car purchase, right? Well, listen up, because I have a way for you to save thousands. Right now, Volkswagen is offering 0% for up to 60 months on a new VW Tiguan with approved credit. Do you realize when you compare a 6.9% rate on $30,000, it can save you $5,730? Now, that's an opportunity you don't want to miss. Come by Terry Volkswagen today, before this deal is gone, and take a spin in this amazing SUV. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook. And our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Hi, I'm Chuck from Aquatrack Adventures in Salem. The Virginia Talk Radio Network and InsaneRadioDeals.com have helped our company grow by sharing our company's message throughout Central and Southside Virginia. The gift cards and experiences sold on InsaneRadioDeals.com have brought us many new customers. If you're a business that wants to grow with a message that resonates and gets results, I highly recommend InsaneRadioDeals.com and the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Simply put, it works.
Real soul food. You feel the warmth from the first bite to the last? That feeling comes to life at the yard. on Fifth Street. Staples like fried catfish sandwich and platter, smoked wings, pulled pork, and Philly brisket sandwich, just like a cheesesteak, except with smoked briskets. Come feel the warmth in every bit of Lynchburg's best soul food. The Yard on Fifth Street in downtown Lynchburg.
Is your spouse saying, let's go, experience something awesome? Well, you're in luck because at InsaneRadioDeals.com, we've been told to let it go of every single item, which is why now through the end of February, enter the promo code FROZEN at checkout for 22% off the list price of every item. That includes Fleet Feet Roanoke gift certificates, Crosswhite Athletic Club, couples and family memberships, Aquatrek Adventures gift certificates, and a SeaofRed.com club passes at InsaneRadioDeals.com now through the end of February.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
And back to the action that comes now with football season wrapping up and basketball taking more center stage. Expect these numbers to change. We'll explain right now on the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
So the NBA's national viewership for games remains down 5% compared to the numbers last season. But here's the thing to take it with a grain of salt. We're just wrapping up football season, and sorry to the NBA out there, but the NFL is king over everything, including you. And the LeBron-Luka debut already had a good impact. 2 million viewers on a randomly flexed game the other night. Normally, regular season national games average about 1.5 to 2 million viewers, so it's above that 1.77 million average. Also, February viewership has been up double digits compared to January, partially because of the trade deadline, partially because the games get more meaningful, and you've got the lack of competition from the NFL. So, I'll be more curious about these numbers at the end of the year than I am right now. Speaking of basketball and things that, well, are on the other side, looked good, but maybe not.
Number 4.
Wake Forest had a 35-21 halftime lead last night and lost to Florida State, 72-70 at home. Look, this cancels out any halfway decent win the Demon Deacons had. They've got to get a victory at SMU and probably against Duke in Cameron later this month, or when they get ready to play potentially one of them in the ACC tournament. They're going to need to do some damage. My thought on Wake has always been this, and I know last year was a challenging year for Steve Forbes with his wife's sickness and health, but I always feel like there's meat on the bone with Wake Forest, and that's the thing that leaves you lacking and wanting more if you're a Demon Deacons fan.
Number 3.
The New York Jets announced a split with quarterback Aaron Rodgers today. It is now officially official. Why the chuckle, Ty?
Whatever they thanked him for what he did to the Jets.
I did find that amusing. Thanking him for what? He missed his first season there with a torn Achilles. Not his fault, but still a missed season. And then he was underwhelming this past year.
I mean, he participated, so that could count.
Finish your medal for Aaron Rodgers. He gets one after what he just did with the Jets. That's about it. Meanwhile,
number 2.
2 nuggets when it comes to the Virginia Tech Hokies. One, former Virginia Tech quarterback Brian Randall has been named as an assistant coach at William & Mary. I love this move. He's their quarterback's coach. He's one of the more cerebral quarterbacks. Remember when Virginia Tech wanted to go with Marcus Vick because he's more athletically talented over Brian Randall, who I don't know. This is not a high bar to clear, by the way. No pun intended with the high part. But the less cerebral Marcus Vick. Brian Randall, very cerebral at quarterback. Got the most out of his abilities. He's the reason why Virginia Tech was able to go to the Sugar Bowl that year back in the mid-2000s and eventually lose to the Auburn Tigers in a game they actually fought hard in. If they stuck with Brian Randall the entire year before, maybe they don't have the debacles of Marcus Vick. That is the classic. He has oozing potential, but didn't do anything. Meanwhile, Randall was the other end, got the most out of his ability. How often does that translate into being successful coaches? To some degree. Meanwhile,
number 1.
Virginia Tech reportedly targeting Bill Stafford, Christian Taylor for the Hokies offensive coordinator vacancy. I'll give him credit at William & Mary for a 4-year stint. 2020 through 2023, very creative. And it fits the idea of Virginia Tech wanting coaches that bring multiple schemes to Blacksburg. They need that at Virginia Tech. And that's one of the good things if you're Virginia Tech is you appear to have a coach, if Christian Taylor, in fact, gets hired, as somebody that could certainly do that. Meanwhile, Liberty, they're on the road tonight, and they're on the road Saturday. New Mexico State, UTEP. My favorite, these 9 o'clock tips, is my reaction. But if I'm a Flames fan, I actually would say this. One of the things is people look at what they did against Sam Houston, a team that only has one win in Conference USA. As John Manson mentioned earlier this week in the Fast Lane, seaofred.com and Fastlane Edlane to check that. This is not a Liberty team that, should be worried about that or the fans. Because the flip side is they destroyed Louisiana Tech 77-53. And they held Daniel Bacho, who's one of the better big men in the league, in check. 8 points, 5 rebounds. They took him out of the game early. And sometimes you're just going to have to grind out a win, as Caden Matheny mentioned about that victory against Sam Houston.
Yeah, it was a battle. We knew it was going to be a grind. These Thursday, Saturday games, or the Saturday quick turnaround, we know might take a little bit to get our legs under ourselves. But hats off to our defense once again. Won it with our defense. Didn't shoot like we wanted to there, but we grinded that one out for sure.
And they did. They found a way to grind it out. And you don't want every win to be that way, but I'm not panicking the way a lot of Liberty Flames fans are because of that. And the reality is the positive of that Sam Houston game is it was a physical game, and you got to show you can handle that. You're going to get it New Mexico State. We all remember what happened last year, but that, and even UTEP this weekend, that's going to be how you play. We know what happened in New Mexico State last year with the punch that was thrown on Shiloh Robinson. We know UTEP, they're at the top of Conference USA play. They got to win at Liberty earlier this year. And Richie McKay admitting they know it's going to be a physical one as well.
I'm just telling you, that's this league. It's physical. There's good players. But guys, if you look around the country, you see teams and conferences with a ton of losses. College basketball is older. Kids stay longer. They're more experienced. And I just think it's our lot until some of these older players have to exhaust their eligibility. When they don't have any more, you might see it a little differently.
And that's why Liberty should be commended. They grinded it out against Sam Houston. They have the ability to be more physical, and something I would expect them to show this coming weekend. Meanwhile, we're back Monday. Virginia Tech baseball slated to debut tomorrow on the VTRN Sports app. A slew of college hoops games over the weekend, and we'll react to it all Monday in the Fast Lane, 5 to 6 p.m. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.